nobody thinks that those things are being used as devices for control and emotional manipulation. You just don't think about that. But actually, if you're in a relationship like that, that's one little nugget out of your day, but there's every chance that it's actually been a highly antagonistic, very difficult experience, even something that should just be just a commonplace.
Let's be honest, you can get killed in a car. It's not that hard. And you would think, and this is the other part that doesn't make sense in these situations, you would think that the person who's doing the abuse through the vehicle is also invested in their own life. But they act in these moments like they're careless, like they don't frankly care who they take with them in these moments.
Because I think highly narcissistic people are more volatile, more erratic. I found car journeys with more strategic, devious, Machiavellian. There was one in particular who had a real thing about control, and everything was very, very, very controlled.
And we were getting in the car and I was having a full-on bad asthma attack. He pulled over and he blocked the people behind us. One of the other car drivers had road rage themselves at us being in the way, not realizing it was a medical emergency. They came over and started screaming at him and at me through the window. And instead of focusing on me and explaining the situation, he got aggressive, pulled out a weapon, and then chased them. And then they came back and then they beat our car, damaging it.
And I don't know why we're surprised by that, because ultimately you're talking about a disordered personality, aren't you? Like severely, pathologically self-centered, just cannot see another person as important under any circumstances. Life or death, still doesn't matter.
Lynn, I hear all the time about road rage and narcissists, and that they seem to go together. And I'm not saying everybody who ever has had road rage is a narcissist. I'm not making that claim, but that it's really common for somebody who has issues with narcissism to also do weird things when they're behind the wheel. First of all, have you experienced this at any level before?
I have, unfortunately. Yeah, I have, with somebody who wound up sort of turning into a stalker. But at that time, that was long before that, he would drive his car in a really kind of threatening way to intimidate you, depending on what was going on within the relationship. And I know that I wasn't the only person that he did that with. So he would use the vehicle as a way of kind of getting to you emotionally, frightening you, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it was actually a method of communication.
Definitely. And of course, because it's an enclosed space, it's a very kind of high tension, high stress environment. So yeah, no, definitely.
It's interesting because my ex, when I first met him, I thought he was too slow, methodical. He was a really, really careful driver, to the point that it kind of bothered me. Here we are on a highway that's moving 70 miles an hour in the United States, and he's moving 55, 60 or something like that. It just felt odd. But on the other hand, who am I to argue about that? Okay, great, he's being careful. But when we got into the relationship, I saw another side. Yeah, he became aggressive. The opposite, the full polar opposite of what I was experiencing before, flipped. It was like he was limiting himself in some way, putting on his best foot forward.
I was going to say, like doing a bit of a show at the beginning to sort of be the perfect driver.
Yeah, like making me feel cared for. Only then once he was in the relationship, it's sort of like, okay, here's the real picture. He was aggressive. He drove erratically. Now, we were living in Mexico in the time, and anybody who's ever driven in Mexico knows that that is not a fun country to drive in, because the rules seem to be guidelines, not rules. Like they'll invent lanes, so you'll be in a 2-lane area, and then suddenly people will act like it's 3 or 4 lanes, and I'm not even exaggerating. Roundabouts, I don't know what you call them in the UK, but we call them roundabouts. They're called glorietas in Mexico, but people would actually make lefts on rights in front of you. It's really... Yeah, so you learn to drive in a different way, but he would drive within inches of the driver ahead of him, hit the accelerator a lot, hit the brake really hard, and then if anybody treated him in a way that he thought was inappropriate, he would get aggressive with them, like ride them too close or actually stop on the highway in front of them to see what it was scary.
But I think you alluded to it at the beginning of the conversation that we're all guilty of like losing our temper. it's difficult, and we've all done it. But I think what happens in a car with someone who's highly narcissistic is the car is kind of like a metaphor for the self, and 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 other people are really just an inconvenience and shouldn't really be there, so, and it's kind of like a broader sort of metaphor, I think, for just how they see the world more broadly. Get out of my way. The speed limit is an obstacle. Other cars are obstacles or irritations, because it's predominantly just this vehicle, this vehicle.
Yeah.
So the car is
Yeah.
just an extension, really, I think. Do you
Yeah,
know
I
what I mean?
agree. I agree. Because, in fact, I don't know how much work you've done with dream interpretation, but people often dream about being in cars. That's a common dream sequence of sorts. And it's interesting because when you're interpreting dreams, which I find fascinating and enjoy doing, is that if you're driving versus if you're a passenger, and it's a metaphor for who's in charge of your life. So it kind of follows with what you're saying is if the car in a way is a metaphor for our sense of control and what we're kind of how we're handling the mastery of our life, these individuals are not just doing this in a dream, handling, dealing, manifesting what they feel about the world. They're manifesting it in reality.
Yeah. But if you're a passenger with a highly narcissistic person, you're also a completely captive audience to that person's emotional states. And they, I feel, are very aware of that they know that you're kind of going to have to feel what I'm feeling. I want you to experience what I'm experiencing, which I think is just narcissistic relationships, full stop. You need to be feeling what I'm feeling right now, because do you know what I mean?
I do. I was thinking about it in a different way, but you're right. You're right. So what you're saying, and because I was heading in a different direction, what you're saying is that if I'm angry, I want you to suffer my anger. I want you to suffer my frustration with the world that's unfair to me.
Yeah, because it is all about what's going on with me, and you're in that enclosed space. So you're literally going to feel what I want you to feel, which I think is exactly what it's like in those relationships. And I also, you were talking about dreams and that metaphor of, who's driving, who's the passenger, who's the driver. But also there's this idea of the sort of destination versus the journey, where, screw the journey, the enjoyment of the journey. It becomes about, the car itself as a kind of representation of how I, often very nice cars, or cars seem to be important, personalized license plates and all that stuff, but not really focusing on enjoying the journey itself, just more about kind of getting my objectives met.
Exactly.
Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. And that's even another interesting angle is what kind of car does this person have? What are they driving? What kind of features do they need to have on it? What do they say about other cars and other drivers of other cars? That's a whole nother aspect of it too.
Have you ever had a real thing about cars? Because I've never really cared. I don't really understand the kind of obsession that people have with cars.
Yes and no. I mean, okay, so I grew up in a family. First of all, we're in the United States. There's three big car makers here. At least there used to be. It used to be GM, Ford, and then there was the Chrysler, GM, Ford, and Chrysler. And I'm from originally Michigan, so that is Car USA. That's where Henry Ford is from, Detroit. So what you find, and this is, I don't know if you know this about Americans, but that we end up, you're a Ford person, or you're a GM person, you're a Chrysler person. Did you know that?
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't.
So my family was Ford buyers. That didn't mean we strictly only bought Fords, but that meant there was a preference into that direction of the vehicle. It was based on, people could argue which was made better. It's just interesting how even that happens, how people get attached to a manufacturer is somehow is the better manufacturer. But so the other kind of rule of thumb is you don't buy new, you buy used, because the minute you drive a car off a lot, you lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had these kind of rules, and so that's what the kind of car buyer I've been is buy used. No, I don't buy Fords. I buy foreign cars usually, but I usually buy reliable. I buy something. Except this last time, I wanted a nice car because I wanted a really nice sound system. So I bought it for the sound system. I didn't buy it for the car.
But did you notice that your very narcissistic ex-husband had a thing about having to have the car, like the
It's it's
swanky?
interesting. No, it's interesting. He had a strong preference for Kias,
Ah, okay.
which is not. I mean, that's kind of a modest car, but we bought a nice high-end one of
Mm,
those.
mm.
Yeah, no, but on the other hand, here was an interesting thing. He would drop hints that he would like to have a Cadillac.
Ah,
He wanted a black Cadillac. He wanted a black
yeah.
SUV
And
Cadillac.
he'd
And he
like you to
went,
buy it.
I think he wanted to get me to buy it. Yes. I would just like, uh-huh. And I just thought, no, that's too strong of a, all I could think of is, who in Mexico drives black Cadillacs?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to align my identity with a black Cadillac. And in Mexico, I'm not, that would be stupid.
Mm.
Yeah, but so yeah, to me that didn't really. He wasn't. He liked nice things. He wanted a Rolex. That was what he would go in and look at them with
Mm.
regularity. Go look at them and then just sort of like drool over them. But normally it wasn't like he had the right clothes stamp and a label, and he wasn't normally that careful.
Mhm.
But he definitely was meticulous about his appearance and meticulous about his belongings.
Mm.
They were kept in good repair. But
Just
here's the
not
odd,
necessarily cars, but
yeah,
certainly,
but here's
yeah.
the really super odd thing, and I know we've diverted off of cars, and I want to go back to, because I think cars also not just serve about as a metaphor of I want you to experience what I'm experiencing. I also think their efforts, like you stated, their messages, their communication.
Mm.
I'm making a statement to you, so I think
100%.
they're both in. But here's the weird thing: is that I caught a video of him because I never got to see where he lived. I never was in his house before he and I moved in together when we got married. And I found a video of him walking through his apartment where he lived, and he lived with a mattress on the floor, a TV on a cardboard box, and clothes, strewn on the bed, and he had no furniture. It's nothing. He was, and I end up wondering how often is that true for a lot of narcissists between supply,
Yeah.
that they are burning, destroying their life so badly that it just becomes this hollow, that they're actually parasitically living on top of other people's developed life, but they
But
don't really have one of their own.
yeah, and of course the car is something that other people are going to see, whereas the
Yes.
home, not necessarily.
Yes,
So
yes,
no
yes.
one was ever going to see him living on a mattress. But the car
Yes.
is like that mask.
Yes, yes, that's a good way. Yes, you're right.
It
Yes.
kind of, I don't know if you experience this as well, and it's not quite a road rage thing, but it's a dysfunctional, really difficult antagonistic behavior around cars, which was, I noticed that he would deliberately take a wrong turn to make the journey go wrong so that I would become stressed and upset and we'd be late. Do you know what I mean? When you knew
Yeah.
that we know where we're going, this is not complicated, but
Oh,
we
he
wound
knew. It
up,
wasn't like a strange area.
no, going the wrong way to create tension, to create an argument, to create stress so that you then end up getting where you're going, really kind of wound up, possibly having had a fight in the car, or certainly, you know what I mean?
I do. Where I didn't experience that, but what I heard from clients, they'd come in and tell me about how their spouse would drive poorly. It scare them, drive
Yeah.
too fast, or take risks, or cut people off, and
Yeah.
then they would come in maybe even for the appointment all stirred up because
Mm.
just exactly what you just described is this person sort of manufactured by their behavior this incident in which now they were trying to regulate themselves from it. I mean, they
Yeah.
were so upset, so angry, so scared maybe even.
And I think that's what's so difficult for survivors or partners, family members, is that what is a really normal, everyday thing, driving a car, going to the supermarket, I don't know, going on a trip, nobody thinks that those things are being used as devices for control and emotional manipulation. You just don't think about that. But actually, if you're in a relationship like that, that's one little nugget out of your day. But there's every chance that it's actually been a highly antagonistic, very difficult experience, even something that should just be just a commonplace thing. And I think that's what's so hard, is because it's such a commonplace event, such a ubiquitous thing. that people often have a hard time believing that really is going on, you know?
Yeah, you're right. They're using these moments that you assume that we're just on autopilot, that they're safe and nobody's giving them any thought, like getting up, getting ready for work and going to work, driving into work. You think that should be just, you do it every day. And yet these are where the moments, those irritating moments occur that really then it sets the whole day wrong because it's conflictual, or because it's coming and it's always bad, or you had an argument and they're going to work the argument out the next time you get in the car with them.
Yeah. But you'll have clients, I don't know if you have this, clients that turn up to a session talking about stuff like that, feeling like they're going crazy. Like, is it just me? You know, am I imagining it that these I mean, this is one topic, but, that these car journeys are just like, why is everything so difficult? Like, just the little things.
Yeah, and then they end up debating this. This is where they go. They say, do I stay in the car, or do I stop and make them get out and take a Lyft, taxi, or something else? It becomes like, or do I just start taking a bus, or do I just start walking? And they literally start to try to think of problem solve, because what they're really describing is a boundary breach that has to do with, because let's be honest, you can get killed in a car. It's not that hard. And you would think, and this is the other part that doesn't make sense in these situations, you would think that the person who's doing the abuse through the vehicle is also invested in their own life. But they act in these moments like they're careless, like they don't frankly care who they take with them in these moments. Did you feel like that when that was happening to you?
I think I was more taken by kind of the cooler sort of psychopathic behavior. That struck me more than that. I feel like I had more exposure to that very calculated, because I think highly narcissistic people, men I'm talking about specifically, because that was my experience, are more volatile, more erratic. I found car journeys with more strategic, devious, Machiavellian. I'm making it sound like there were loads of them. There weren't. There was one in particular who had a real thing about control, and everything was very, very, very controlled. Everything was immaculate, perfect, but very often little traps set up around journeys, traveling. I'm not being very specific for a reason, but he was really scary. And he would use the car. He would turn up late. And of course, I was frightened of him, so I wouldn't challenge him. And then he would deliberately screw up the whole experience, but always completely cool. Whereas more narcissistic, just very erratic and angry and,
It reminds me, here was an incident that happened in the car with me that I found extraordinarily disturbing. We had left a movie, and we were in a mall parking garage. Mexico has big cities, are very metropolitan, just like European cities and cities in the United States. And we were in a setting like that. And we were getting in the car, and I was having a full-on bad asthma attack. And I didn't have any medication on me at the time. And we're near a pharmacy. We just need to get to the pharmacy so I can run in and get the right medication. And he pulled over, and there was a line of cars trying to get out of the mall parking because it was like a movie just let out. So it was a big line of cars. He pulled over and he blocked the people behind us. And one of the other car drivers got enraged, had road rage themselves at us being in the way, not realizing it was a medical emergency. It wasn't just to be provocative. They came over and started screaming at him and at me through the window. And instead of focusing on me and explaining the situation, he got aggressive, pulled out a weapon, and then chased them. And then they came back, and then they beat our car, damaging it with an implement. Meanwhile, I'm having a full-on
I was going to say, were you all right?
asthma attack.
Did you get to the hospital?
I did get to the pharmacy, but that was the whole other part of it. He took a long time, and I did think in the moment, he doesn't care if I die. And that I had a babysitter die of an asthma attack, not in our house, but it happened. I knew her. She'd been babysitting my kids on a regular basis, and she had a flare like this. and then died at the school grounds from an asthma attack. So I realized it was a real risk that if I didn't get the right kind of care in the right type of time, and if it didn't
And he
resolve on its
wasn't.
own, and asthma responds to crisis, it gets worse. So here I am under crisis, which might make my lungs tighten further. It was, oh man, it
Oh
was
God.
awful. It was awful. And there's a part of me, there was a moment that I felt like his use of the vehicle was very manipulative and felt staged. That are chasing down the people, engaging with them, getting them to actually, take something to the car and put dents in the side of near the bumper. I just felt, it felt, you know, ruthless, maybe callous. Yeah.
And I don't know why we're surprised by that, because ultimately you're talking about a disordered personality, aren't you? Like severely, pathologically self-centered, just cannot see another person as important under any circumstances. I think that's easy to forget as well, isn't it? Like life or death still doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's almost like what I felt like is if I had said to him, this is what I actually thought about this at the time. I thought if I said to him, this is life threatening, we need to treat it so, that he would think, oh, you're just being so dramatic. But I and I also knew that it was my late husband who knew a young lady who died, the teenager who died, that he treated my asthma attacks seriously, like they were life threatening, because he'd had that experience
I'd
and knew.
seen it.
Yeah, he'd seen it. He knew her. We went to her funeral. It was real. We knew the family. I mean, it was a massive loss. And he also he'd seen me have lots of asthma attacks. So, but I felt like it was kind of to go with what you were saying. My ex's interpretation of reality was his own interpretation. And it didn't matter what reality was. It was based on his interpretation.
Yeah.
If it wasn't life-threatening, to him, it wasn't life-threatening.
Because I say so. Yeah.
Yeah, because I say so. Exactly. Yeah,
Crazy.
it was the strangest experience. And this is an exercise I do with people. So when I was back in the day when I was doing counseling, I would ask them to imagine a room in their mind space and fill the room with those that were most important to them. And then let that populate with that group, and then begin to say, who's the most dramatically colorful? Who's standing in the center? Who's the loudest? Who's nearly invisible? Who lacks color? And then I would say, where are you standing in the room? And what I found is when people are in relationships with a narcissist, that person's in the center and they're very large, they're dramatic, they're bold, they're outlined well. And usually the partner is often struggles to find themselves in the room, or they're their wallflower. But that's what it feels like in the car. It actually feels like that.
Yeah. Yeah. But the trouble with being a passenger is you literally are stuck though, aren't you? There's just nothing you can do about it. And it can be quite scary.
It can. So what I did, and I'd love to know what you did, I would play in my phone. I downloaded games, and I would literally play games on my phone, and I wouldn't watch. I would just tune out.
Yeah, no, I can't. I get really bad car sickness if I do anything with my eyes fixed, or like reading, games, phone, anything like that. And the time I was talking to you about before with the really frightening behaviour that was deliberately, he was screaming at the top of his lungs, the C word at me at the end of a disastrous weekend. And I was absolutely terrified, and I just didn't say anything. I just kind of kept my eyes front. And I remember thinking, if I could just get home, just get me home. And we got home, and I swore I would never have anything to do with him again. And, within 6 weeks, I was back in the relationship. The way that we do. I thought I might not make it home in one piece. Got home and then swore, that's it, I'm done. I'm never going through this again. But 6 weeks later, back I was.
I do know. Were you ever in the car again with him?
Not like that. No, that was a long journey. Yeah.
But it's interesting you got back into a car again, though. It just wasn't like that.
Crazy.
Even that. I mean, I know. I rode for 3 years with this guy. 3 years. And this is, yeah, like you, I feel it too. I feel that same sort of like, I can't believe that I did this. I felt like getting in the car with him was taking my life in my own hands. And yet I would get in the car over and over and over again.
You still do it.
I know. It's like I felt like, okay, the options were this. Either I drive and he critiques me and he's ruthless and relentless, or he drives and I deal with the consequence and I shut my mouth and play on the phone and try to pretend that he's not about ready to kill us over many overtimes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's just one of those things that you learn to accept as just part of the relationship. This is
yeah.
just the price that you pay,
Yeah.
which after a period of time, you look back and think, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah. That's the really, really hard part. That to me is it's like you said, what was I thinking part of it? And yet, well, what were my options? I mean, people will, well, your options are really clear. You get out. But leaving is, I mean, that's we will get into that discussion, but that's not simple. Things are not that simple.
No, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. This is really fascinating. So but we didn't get into, and let's touch on it briefly before we wrap this up. I do also think they use the car as a method of communication. That when they're enraged, it's like, I'm going to punish you and I want you to feel terror. And this is, I'm taking this out on you, or I don't want to do or go what you're making me do, or, where we're going. And so I'm going to make sure in a passive aggressive way, let you know that I'm angry about this. And this is my way of expressing the frustration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know if this is going to get, I think it's difficult saying stuff about men specifically, because I know that there are, of course, a lot of abusive women. But I think because of certainly our generation experiences with men, there's a real kind of men, cars, women being, kind of stupid or not knowledgeable about there's something about, certainly I'll speak for myself, our generation getting into a car with a man, and there's almost an assumption that, well, you don't know anything. There's a kind of hierarchical thing from the kind of get-go. And all I was meaning there was, I think in a way that I would push back very differently on someone using using that kind of environment to sort of, I don't know, project their feelings. I wouldn't tolerate that now because I see it quite differently. But I think there is something about being a woman with an aggressive man in a car where we might sort of tolerate some of that.
It is. In fact, I was thinking of the old commercials that we used to have, which is the sexy woman sleeking against the car. It's almost as if the car and the women were status symbols. You had the right looking woman and you had the right kind of car, and they went together, and that's your role. You were to play that role, function in that way.
Did you notice narcissistic men like making the hand signals for you? Like thanking other drivers on your behalf, like you wouldn't think of doing that yourself. Do you know what I mean by that?
No, I didn't see that, but I could see that happening. Absolutely. Yeah. I got more comments like, you should go now. Go now. Why did you go now?
Oh, right.
Directions on, like, literally, you didn't take that left. You missed it. You missed it. Like, back. Or once he said to me, you're the kind, and I thought this was the strangest comment. You're the kind of driver that makes other people have accidents. And I was like, where's the pile-ups behind me? I don't literally know what you're talking about. Meanwhile, he had an accident in my car. So there you go.
You do kind of wonder, like, what do you think I'm doing when you're not here? Like giving me top tips on how to live my life.
I've been driving since I'm 16. And since I'm older than you by a few years, that means longer than you.
Yeah. No, I definitely noticed the kind of, like if somebody let me out, thanking them on my behalf.
Oh, it's like, thank you for letting the little lady through.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff's got to go. It's got to go.
I know. It's interesting. So let's hop over to the podcast extra and talk about, what do you do if this is happening to you? Because I know you and I are now not in situations where we're dealing with it on a regular basis in our life, and I hope never to. It's one of my goals. I don't want to get in a car with somebody like that again. But I know that there are people who are really battling this, and so I'd love to hop over and have that kind of discussion. But thank you so much. This was a fascinating discussion.
Thanks, Kerry.